A deadly outbreak of parasites forces two sisters to fight for survival in a quarantined city where every mistake is fatal. In the media, the atmosphere is tense, with news about an epidemic causing an uproar in China, where the Department of Health has already declared a quarantine. Reports indicate that this mysterious disease is caused by a small parasitic organism, resembling a worm, leading the public to nickname it worm flu. Unlike the common cold, transmission does not occur through the air, but rather through contact with contaminated blood. On the other side of the world in California, young Emma faces challenges adapting to her new school. Unlike her sister Stacy, who already has an established social circle and even a boyfriend, Emma feels out of place and lonely. After a typical school day, Stacy notices Emma's interest in Evan, her own crush, and decides to give her sister a ride. The car ride, driven by Michael, the girl's father and a biology teacher, is marked by awkward silence. During the trip, Stacy, attempting to provoke Emma, sends annoying messages to her sister's phone, leading to an argument between the two. Meanwhile, the girl's mother, who is far away in another state, calls to check on her daughters. The conversation she has with Michael is loaded with tension, reflecting problems in the marriage. Later, during dinner, Michael tries to enforce a no-phone rule at the table, but Stacy rebels and harshly criticizes her father's attempts to maintain family structure. Frustrated, Michael sends her to her room. After dinner, in a moment of relaxation, Emma video calls her friend Gracie, who mentions a special tea she's drinking due to her mother's persistent cough. Together they watch a disturbing video of a man infected with the worm flu attacking another person in an elevator, a scene that spreads like a sinister rumor across the internet. Amid this tension, a paper airplane flies through the open window of Emma's room. Curious, she unfolds it and finds a drawing made by Evan. With a smile, she writes her phone number on the paper and sends it back out the window, marking the beginning of a shy connection between the two. Shortly after, Emma and Evan meet outside the house. As they share a moment of complicity, they are interrupted by Evan's abusive stepfather, Bill, who appears, provoking the young man before returning inside the house. Before saying goodbye, Emma gives Evan a tender kiss on the cheek and heads back home. There, she confronts her father with concerns about the situation with her mother, to which Michael confesses that things are indeed difficult. The next day, during a class on parasites, Michael uses videos and a live larva in a jar to illustrate his teachings, emphasizing that the worm flu might be parasitic in nature. He highlights how some parasites can manipulate the behavior of their hosts, showing a video of a rat that, under parasitic influence, does not fear cats, an analogy that leaves the class intrigued and somewhat horrified. Evan describes the situation as something out of a zombie movie. Suddenly, Gracie starts coughing up blood violently and runs out. Worried, Emma follows her and finds her convulsing on the floor. Desperate, she yells for help, and a classmate appears to assist Gracie, while Emma runs to find the school nurse. Suddenly, Gracie stops convulsing and vomits blood onto the face of the boy who was helping her. Shortly after, a government agent arrives to examine Emma, questioning her about Gracie's recent behavior. Emma mentions that Gracie's mother had recently returned from San Francisco. As the situation worsens, authorities decide to cancel classes, and the military seals off the town, preventing anyone from entering or leaving. Meanwhile, Michael discovers that his wife is stranded at the airport without a taxi and is forced to pick her up personally. The sisters manage to catch a ride home, and on the way, they see neighbors preparing to flee the town. Upon arriving home, Emma discovers through the internet that California has been declared an infected zone and that the parasite is rapidly evolving. She tries to call Gracie but only reaches her voicemail. Suddenly, a noise draws her attention to the window, where she sees a deer in the garden that mysteriously disappears after a helicopter flies overhead. Michael calls to inform her that the roads have been blocked and that he is trapped, with no estimate on when he can return home. He instructs his daughters to stay safe at home and not to accept any visitors. At night, while Emma is changing, she receives a message from Evan, who says he can see her through the window. They take advantage of the situation to exchange some innocent flirts. The sisters realize there's little food left at home and decide to make brownies to enjoy while watching the president's address on TV. He reassures the nation that the outbreak will be contained if everyone follows the safety protocols. While Emma is in the kitchen, she hears a noise outside and cautiously approaches the door, peeking through the mailbox. A shadow moves, startling her. However, Stacy thinks she's overreacting and opens the door, showing that no one is there. Suddenly, someone grabs Emma by the neck, causing her to scream, but it turns out to be just a prank that Stacy had planned with her boyfriend, CJ. An irritated Emma scolds the two, reminding them of Michael's strict instructions, but the couple ignores her and runs to Stacy's room to have fun. Meanwhile, Emma checks social media and comes across an update from Gracie's parents, informing her that she is stable. Amid the comments, she stumbles upon a video of a conspiracy theorist warning that the situation is much worse than the government admits. But Emma can barely focus on the video due to the noise coming from Stacy's room. The next morning, the sound of CDC vehicles driving through the neighborhood wakes Emma. They are distributing disaster kits. The sisters and CJ open their boxes, finding field rations, a flare, a flashlight, a first aid kit, masks, and other essential items. A note warns them to contact the authorities immediately if anyone shows symptoms. CJ and Stacy treat everything with disdain, but the lightheartedness is interrupted by a worrying call from their mother, who is still stuck at the airport. Shortly after, Emma turns on the TV and learns that several infected patients have mysteriously disappeared. Without concern, Stacy says that she and CJ are going to a party, ignoring Emma's protests. As they leave, Emma receives a message from Evan, saying he'll meet her at the party since Stacy used his phone to invite him. Now, even Emma has to break the rules. The party takes place in an abandoned building, full of carefree teenagers. Emma is the only one wearing a mask. A young man in a hoodie with his face covered, visibly sick, moves suspiciously through the place. Emma finds Evan, and they try to enjoy the moment, dancing and sharing a drink before looking for a more private spot. With all the rooms occupied, they sit in an unused bathtub. Evan expresses his feelings for Emma and leans in to kiss her, but they're interrupted by Stacy's screams. She's arguing with another girl and CJ after discovering he was cheating on her. As Emma tries to calm her sister, the guy in the hoodie grabs a girl by her coat, but is confronted by another young man. He releases the girl and turns around, revealing red eyes and dark veins pulsing on his face, a clear sign of infection. With surprising strength, he throws the defender aside, causing widespread panic. The sisters run to hide in another room, peeking at the chaotic scene through a hole in the wall. After a tense silence, they see a girl trying to sneak out while the chaos seems to subside. In a fatal accident, she makes noise, and a crazed man spots her and kills her without hesitation. After devouring his victim, a parasite emerges, sliding out of his mouth, a grotesque sight. The sisters watch, waiting for the right moment to escape. Unfortunately, a careless move causes a bottle to roll across the floor, catching the attacker's attention, the man in the hoodie. In a desperate move, Stacy pushes Emma, trying to protect her, but the attacker manages to spit blood on Stacy's face before chasing Emma, tearing off her protective mask. The struggle is intense, but Emma, with a well-placed strike, manages to knock the attacker down. At the same time, tragically, a parasite burrows into Stacy's eye, which she hides from Emma. The infected man quickly gets back up, ready to attack again, but he's intercepted by Dave, who knocks him out with a piece of wood. As they hear police sirens in the distance, the young people escape through the back. Back at home, Stacy cleans the blood off while Emma watches videos from a conspiracy theorist who suggests that the parasites might be communicating through an inaudible network, causing the infected to gather and form nests. The video is interrupted by a government message urging the public to report any suspicious symptoms. Trying to contact Evan, Emma finds her phone dead and the lights out, heightening her fear. The next day, military scientists visit the sisters to check for signs of the virus, but both deny any contact with the infected. After the scientists leave, Stacy feels discomfort in her neck and lets her hair down to hide it. The news on TV shows deserted streets and houses marked by the military. At that moment, they receive an urgent call from Michael, warning them to lock everything up and arm themselves. The call drops before he can explain further. The news continues with reports of the Chinese government bombing areas with high infection rates, and suddenly, an emergency broadcast announces the imposition of martial law. The sisters search for the gun, and while Emma finds their mother's wedding ring, a sign of family troubles, Stacy surprises her by handling the gun skillfully, a result of training with Michael. That night, a neighbor fires a flare, a cry for help amidst the chaos as someone nearby is infected. Emma tries to send a message to Michael, but her attempts are in vain. The communication network fails. Meanwhile, the street becomes chaotic with the arrival of soldiers who drag an infected woman away, ignoring the desperate protests of her husband. In the sky, flares multiply, a grim warning that the parasite is spreading rapidly through the neighborhood. Sensing the imminent danger, the sisters decide to flee by car. Shortly after, on the road, the sisters encounter a military checkpoint. Stacy tries to persuade the soldiers to let them pass, but Emma pulls her back upon seeing a runaway truck approaching at high speed. The vehicle nearly crashes into the barrier, and the soldiers, distracted by the situation, open fire. Taking advantage of the chaos, the sisters manage to escape and return home. The next morning, Stacy notices a suspicious lump at the base of her neck, but chooses to keep it a secret. Meanwhile, a government patrol announces that it is now a crime to shelter infected people. Alarmed, Stacy tries to pop the lump with a heated pin, but recoils when she feels something move under her skin. That night, Stacy begins to confess something to Emma, but hesitates at the last moment. Instead of revealing the infection, she tells Emma that Michael cheated on their mother with one of his students last semester. Emma is saddened for not being informed earlier, but the conversation is interrupted by Stacy's violent coughing. Suddenly, Evan appears at the door, desperate to get inside, explaining that Bill is infected. Ignoring Stacy's protests, Emma opens the door for Evan, who quickly closes it as soon as he enters. Immediately, Bill starts banging on the door. While Stacy runs to grab masks, Emma watches through the peephole, only to see Bill spit blood on the door and then circle the house, jumping through a window. The sudden invasion causes the teenagers to fall and drop the gun. Bill quickly recovers, with visible parasites moving in his neck and coming out of his ears as he approaches Emma. However, before he can reach her, Stacy, recovering the gun, shoots him, killing him. The shock of the situation triggers a panic attack in Emma, while Evan tries to calm her down. Then, in a tense moment, Stacy faints. The gun fires accidentally, and she begins to convulse and cough up blood, confirming her infection. Moments later, she is locked in the bathroom. Evan suggests they turn Stacy over to the soldiers, but Emma, determined, refuses to abandon her sister. In an effort to deceive the army, she leaves the house and, with a spray can in hand, paints graffiti on the front declaring that everyone inside is healthy. A few hours later, Stacy, hungry and weakened, begs for food and asks Emma to leave before something worse happens. Emma, resolute, holds her sister's hand and comforts her, reinforcing that sisters take care of each other, no matter the cost. To try to find a solution, Emma dives into research on how to deal with parasites, recalling an educational video that Michael had shown at school. During a moment of respite, she climbs onto the roof, hoping to get a cell signal, but her attempts are in vain. Up there, Evan finds her crying, devastated by the possibility of never seeing her parents again. Meanwhile, CJ, discovering that the army had evacuated the city and that people were fleeing, enters the house searching for Stacy. He finds her in the bathroom and, through the boards that isolate her, holds her hand. However, Stacy, dominated by the parasite, begins to feed on CJ's arm, and he, overcome with pain, screams. Emma and Evan, alerted by the screams, rush inside and find CJ already lifeless. Stacy, in tears, apologizes, explaining that the parasite was controlling her against her will. In a grim act, Evan takes on the task of burying CJ in the garden next to Bill, while Emma, determined not to lose her sister to this creature, crushes sedatives and mixes them into the food. She offers the meal to Stacy and extends her hand as a gesture of trust and solidarity. When Stacy falls asleep, they take the opportunity to apply the method they saw in the video. Emma touches the lump on her sister's neck, and upon noticing the parasite moving, she quickly seals the area with tape to suffocate the invader. The parasite, in search of air, emerges, and Emma, armed with tweezers, begins to pull it out. The creature, a long and repulsive worm, resists, making the process take longer than expected. Suddenly, Stacy wakes up, and in a surge of lucidity, fights against the parasite, trying to regain control. After a tense struggle, she manages to pull out the worm, and Evan destroys it by repeatedly stomping on it. The next day, Stacy already shows signs of improvement, with the swelling in her neck almost gone. Outside, the army announces the official evacuation of the area, urging everyone to leave. Emma, however, hesitates to go, fearing what might happen to Stacy if they discovered her recent infection. Later, they discover through a radio that the army is using scanners to detect people hiding in their homes. Meanwhile, Emma checks on Stacy and is horrified to see her sister covered in worms. However, she quickly realizes it was just a nightmare. Suddenly, Evan calls Emma to the kitchen, revealing an alarming discovery. The food supply was completely gone, and bloodstains on the floor suggested that Stacy had something to do with it. Worried, Emma sets out to find her sister, discovering her fleeing the residence. She and Evan rush to follow Stacy to a neighboring house, where they uncover a macabre scene, an entire family dead. By the signs, It seems the father committed a desperate act, killing his family before taking his own life. Following a trail of blood that leads them to a nearby storage facility, Emma and Evan find something even more shocking: a nest of infected people, with Gracie at the center, extending her worms to the others. When Gracie opens her eyes, the duo tries to back away quietly, but a toy is accidentally triggered, alerting the infected to their presence. In a frantic escape, they run out of the house with the infected close behind. They rush upstairs, trying to close a door behind them, but one of the infected pushes back. Without hesitation, Emma shoots the attacker. Evan quickly uses furniture to block the passage. It's then that Emma finds Stacy, visibly disturbed, unable to silence the voices of the parasites in her mind, urging her to kill Emma. Through tears, Stacy begs Emma to kill her. Initially, Emma resists the idea, but when Stacy begins to transform and lunges to attack her, she is forced to shoot. Emma wishes for one last moment by her sister's side, but the infected begin breaking down the door. Evan quickly drags her to the window, and together they climb up to the roof. Up there, they see the military bombing the area. Without hesitation, they jump into a nearby pool, using the water to shield themselves from the imminent explosion. Submerging as much as they can, they only resurface when everything seems safe. Around them, the city lies in ruins. Sometime later, Emma and Evan reach a roadblock and realize the soldiers have already left. They stop at an abandoned gas station, where Emma finds a photograph of her family with a note from her father, instructing the daughters to find him and their mother at their uncle's house in Washington. Determined, they borrow a car, and before leaving share a kiss, promising to face whatever comes next together. And so the movie ends.